She's an editor by day and a zombie killer by night. At least she is in her books. Although I wouldn't be surprised if she is in real life too. Since first watching Night of the Living Dead, Jessica has been obsessed by zombies, and she often spends her days thinking of ways to survive the upcoming uprising. Recently, she wrote a nonfiction book about the undead that explores how they're a metaphor for society's fears about science. Called Undead Obsessed, this book examines how zombies are all about real-world fears such as epidemics, mind control, space creatures, and playing God. But Jessica is not just about zombies for scholarly adults. No, no, no. Under the pen name of Pembroke Sinclair, she writes young adult novels about zombies and about the intrepid teens who survive the apocalyptic world. She's written too for Serial Killer magazine. She's published a book about slasher films. And because I know Jessica well, I know she's going to do a brilliant job relating the zombie apocalypse to living in Laramie. So let's get her up here for Science and Zombies.
We have a love-hate relationship with science, don't we? Science has made it possible for us to live the way we do. It has given us numerous advances in all fields of life, from medicine to agriculture to entertainment. Yet with all of these advantages, there are a multitude of disadvantages that could prove to be detrimental to humans and society. Weapon technology used in wars is one of these major disadvantages, but anything that is beneficial to humanity, including medicine, has the potential to harm us. What comes to mind when I ask you what represents science? Is it some cliched variation of a person in a white coat in a lab surrounded by various beakers filled with colored liquid? Is there a microscope present? Do you view science as sterile, elitist, and doesn't allow for free thinking? Do you think scientists are passionless and lacking in emotion, that they are cold and calculating? If these traits come to your mind, you're not alone. More often than not, these stereotypes are applied to scientists, especially in the movies. Let's face it, when it comes to horror movies, science has a bad reputation. Blind ambition, experimental serums, and genetic experiments are often blamed for the giant monster terrorizing the city, or the reason aliens are taking human prisoners, or the cause of the dead rising from the grave to consume living flesh. In horror films, science unleashes the horror onto humankind and then fails to find the cure. When it comes to zombies and scientists, these two creatures share similar traits. They are stereotypically cold and focused. They are also obsessed with obtaining their desires. For zombies, it's flesh. For scientists, it's answers at the expense of humanity. Examples of these fears and the negative impact science and scientists have on society in the form of zombies can be seen in movies and books throughout history. In 1818, Mary Shelley explored these same fears in her book Frankenstein. Dr. Victor Frankenstein is so focused on reanimating a corpse and cheating death, he locks himself away for years. He becomes a stereotypical scientist that can't see anything beyond his work or his desires. And he is successful in his endeavor. But what happens when his creation is released into the world? It becomes bitter, resentful, and looks for revenge, which he attains by murdering the people Victor loves. In 1985, in Day of the Dead, Dr. Logan keeps Bub, a zombie, chained up, feeding him the remains of his colleagues and the soldiers to keep the zombie placated. Logan is completely obsessed with trying to make the zombie civilized, and he refuses to let anything distract him from his mission, even morals. He does whatever is necessary to ensure he has the proper test subjects to continue his research, which includes dehumanizing his colleagues and making them food. In 2002, and 28 days later, a group of activists break into a lab to release apes that have been the subject of animal testing. The activists believe that the acts are cruel, while the scientific community views them as necessary to find answers. When the scientist walks in, dressed in a white lab coat, of course, the activist asks him what he is doing. In a cold, calculating voice, he explains that to be able to find a cure for disease, they have to understand how the illness works. There is no sympathy for the animals, no remorse for what they are going through. The activists are enraged and start freeing the test subjects. The scientist warns them that the apes are infected, but that doesn't stop them, and disease is released into the public. In each of these examples, science is trying to find a way to make life easier for us by cheating death, or by finding a way to coexist with undead creatures, or by understanding a virus. But the end result is the same. The good intentions of the scientist doom humanity. And we are afraid that will happen in real life. Recently, patients who were infected with Ebola were brought to the US to be treated. What happened when people found out this was happening? How did the public react? How did you react? Were you angry? Afraid? Did you question the motives of science and the scientists and wonder what they were thinking? The goal of science and scientists was to help these people, to make them better and to understand this horrible virus, perhaps even find a way to cure it. But what happens if that virus gets into the US population? Will science be able to stop it? How many people will it kill? Science may want to help these people, but what guarantee do we have that they can keep the rest of us safe? We automatically assumed that the worst would happen and Ebola would cause the apocalypse. While science can be extremely helpful in advanced society, it has the potential to be its downfall, which is evident in zombie books and films. We recognize the good science does for society, but the aspects we don't understand about it become evil and scary. The question of, could this really happen, fuels our distrust and fear of science and scientists and lets our imagination rule our judgments. The situation with the Ebola victims being brought into the US is exactly how many horror films begin, and more specifically, zombie films. So, on one hand, books and movies inform our views or stereotypes of science and scientists, but on the other, real life influences our books and movies. But our fear doesn't know the difference between fact and fiction.